Good morning, academics and scholars. It's Tuesday of week 3, and I just wanted to pop in and cover a little bit of the content this week with you. As always, you should be on Monday mornings reading your TSC emails and Canvas messages to remind you that a new weekly learning module has opened. You click on over to modules in Canvas, and you begin to move through the module, taking notes, reviewing everything, reading everything, articles, slideshows, videos. And then once you've covered the content, then you move on to the tasks in order that way that you are covering the material before you try to assess yourself on the material. So make sure that you're moving through coursework like an academic, that you are using every single day in your week to be as successful as possible. This is a leadership course. I'm looking to see you level up every week, learning from your mistakes, creating great productive habits, using the information in this course to self-actualize and maximize yourself. Okay, so let's talk. This week we're talking about understanding leadership skills. So we have talked about what is leadership. We've covered a historical perspective. We talked about how leadership itself is kind of a baby study of science, right? We're really only really covered leadership as far as studying it as a science really in the last 50 or 60 years. So it's really an emergent focus, right? And I think there's a lot of really interesting things we are learning currently through medical science about the brain and about how all of these things can really help us learn how to actualize ourselves so that we can be the best self-leaders we can be. So that way we can use our leadership in any area of our life we wish. I know a lot of you are thinking professionally, but like I've said previously, leadership is needed in every area of your life. So let's get into it. First, we know already, because we've covered what leadership isn't and busted those stereotypes, that any of us can be a leader, right? You don't have to be born a leader. We are here to learn what makes a leader and then help ourselves grow into our own leadership potential. So what you're going to see this week is we're going to start with beginning to, like we did last week, what are the global cultural leadership skills that great leaders have? And then also what are 2024, 2025, 2026, and further out, what kind of leadership skills do we need for modern day, right? So let's take a look at what some of these are. You can see here critical thinking, growth mindset, resiliency, flexibility, problem solving, big one, conflict management, collaboration, because more and more we're working as teams, whether that's remotely or in person, and communication. I have one in pink here, and that's emotional intelligence. You may or may not have heard of emotional intelligence before, but the reason why I have it highlighted is because emotional intelligence, we are finding, is one of the most important skills you can possess as an individual for your own personal in your personal life success, but also in your professional life. Why? Because emotional intelligence is not your intellectual quotient, right? It's not your IQ, it's your EQ, your emotional quotient. Meaning, how aware are you of what you're feeling when you're feeling it so that you can then regulate it, so then you are not walking through the world sort of emotionally vomiting or releasing negative tension all over people as you move through it. We can all right now think of people who we know don't regulate themselves well, don't hold themselves accountable, don't self-reflect, they don't change, they don't grow. You have a personal responsibility to acknowledge that you have a personal choice to either mature and grow and progress or not. And so if you are looking to be the best in whatever it is that you're looking to do, then you have to begin with one, the first part of EQ or emotional intelligence is knowing that all of these soft skills, they're called soft skills rather than hard skills. Your hard skill is going to be your technical skill. That's what you're getting your degree in. You're getting a degree in nursing. You should know how to nurse, right? You're getting a degree in accounting. You should know how to be an accountant. Education, a teacher. But what you're not going to technically or maybe learn in school is how to be a person who can walk through the world regulated, a person who is not ready to wake up on the wrong side of the bed and take that out on customers, clients, patients, to be the kind of person who, when you encounter a negative response or a conflict with someone else in the workplace or otherwise, that you can take a deep breath and figure out a way to move through it with respect and even empathy. These things matter, and especially in this time where we're more focused on technology and we're living our digital lives more and more, these skills really do become important, and I'll give you some evidence about that in just a minute. So what does emotional intelligence mean? It means, one, self-awareness. You are aware of what you're feeling when you're feeling it. You are aware that you are in a mood. You are aware that you have there are potential landmines or trigger points for you because you are walking through the world with maybe more stress than usual. Number two, motivation, that regardless of what's happening, you recognize that you need to stay disciplined disciplined and activated and focused on what it is that you're doing. Number 3 is self-regulation. This is a huge one. So once you can first be self-aware enough to know I am feeling hungry, right? And so I know that when I'm feeling hungry, I can be testy, I can be prickly, I can be agitated, I can be frustrated. My face can do things that communicate things that I didn't intend to. So once we learn the self-awareness, then we can stay motivated and we can self-regulate to say, okay, I need to go get that food so that I don't, I'm not rude to my colleagues. I need to make sure that I, wake up early enough so that I'm not rushed in the morning, because then I have a bad attitude and I'm mean to my girlfriend or whatever it is. You have a responsibility. Next is social skills. We now know from science and from everything else that social skills, even when they don't come naturally to us, they can be taught. And so the more we can sort of learn this unconscious language that we all speak of social skills, what our face is doing, what our body's doing, what our hands are doing, that our tone of voice, all of this communicates something to someone else. We have a responsibility to understand that. I may have a loud voice. I personally come from a Cuban family. We talk fast, we talk loud, we interrupt. This is not socially acceptable everywhere all the time. If I'm in a board meeting, I can't be interrupting the president of the company simply because I have an idea, right? Or I can't be louder than everyone else. This might be perceived a certain way. So these are things we have to understand, that although this is personal to me, there is a time and a place where I can mask and unmask, right? That we have a responsibility to walk through the world, recognizing other people's needs as well as our own. And finally, the last piece in emotional intelligence is empathy. So self-awareness, motivation, self-regulation, social skills, and empathy. And empathy is a big and important word. Empathy is not sympathy. Sympathy is, I feel so bad for you. I'm so sorry that happened. And you send a card, or you send flowers, or you send food. But that's kind of where it ends, right? Empathy is really doing the best you can to stay present for the other person, to really try and understand their perspective, because you will never be in their shoes. But you're doing the best you can to understand what's happening by asking questions, by being present, and by communicating in a way that they might appreciate, not necessarily you. All right, so now that we know that leadership, because it is about relationships, right? We cannot create great products. We cannot create great marketing. We cannot be great doctors. Whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, we cannot build a great company if we are not understanding that we need the people within the company to be happy, okay, working at this company. So leadership is about relationships, because no matter how great a product you make, if you cannot keep the employees that you have trained, invested in, spent money on, right, then you cannot be successful in the long term, because you're going to have this turnover of employees constantly that you have to train. And so there's going to be a reputation about, what kind of leadership goes on in your particular enterprise. So you have a responsibility to learn about what it takes to be someone who can relate to others much better. But how do we relate to others better? It is first by relating to ourselves. You cannot relate to other people, meaning communication, resolving conflict, all the stuff that comes up, without having high emotional intelligence and understanding what you're feeling when you're feeling it. So are you going to get taught, since we now know that emotional intelligence is so important and it's such a big important skill in your professional life and otherwise, will you get taught this in school? And what we know is that most education, although we're getting better at it, but most of the time our education, our higher education in particular, is not going to teach us about emotional intelligence, even though we now know, are you ready? We now know that your emotional intelligence is going to account for how often you get hired and promoted. That's a fact, okay? People with higher emotional intelligence get hired and promoted far more often than others. Why is that? Because your emotional intelligence actually accounts for about 60% of your job performance. Your emotional intelligence accounts for about 60% of your job performance. Think about that. So if you go in every 6 months or a year to your supervisor's office and you know it's time for your job evaluation, I hope that you've been thinking about how it is that you're talking to colleagues, how it is that you go about resolving issues when two of you have crossed up or a team is sort of feeling like they're outsiders. How did you address that? Do your colleagues like working with you? Do they have good things to say about you? Guess what? You're not only good at your job at the hard skill, right, of being a manager or whatever it is, but you're now good at the soft skill of dealing with other people and managing yourself well. So now you have the two crucial components of being someone who's going to not only get hired because, hey, you walked in the room and you made great eye contact and you spoke well and you didn't say 50 times. All of those things matter. And so you have a responsibility to make sure that you are really investing in your emotional intelligence. It is very, very important. So make sure that you're thinking about how you can educate yourself with emotional intelligence outside of just this little module this week and us talking about it throughout the semester. Dig into this. Figure out how you can get better emotionally so that you can be a better partner, how you can be a better sibling, how you can be a better child or grandchild, how you can be better at your current, maybe it's not your lifetime job, or maybe it is. How can I learn to identify where my weaknesses are and then grow from them, right? This is very important, and understanding that conflict is natural in human relationships. It is not something to avoid. It is not something to be fearful of, but it is something to understand that, hey, if we see things differently, that's a conflict. That's it. It's just a difference in perspective. It's an opportunity for us to understand, okay? So all of that matters. Next, we're going to talk about, you'll see that we are going to talk about one other important leadership skill that I think is really foundational to your success. And it's not just me that thinks it, it's science that thinks it. So the next part of your module is going to talk to you about the foundational science of growth mindset. And hopefully I'm not the first person to mention it to you. About 10 years ago, Dr. Carol Dweck did 30 years of research where she figured out that we used to think it was, okay, why did Steve Jobs, right, become so successful? Can you answer that question? You're going to say because he was creative and smart, right? Okay. Wrong, right? We have learned that the most successful people, doesn't matter where, doesn't matter when, doesn't matter how much money they grew up with, the most successful people, it has nothing to do with their education or generational wealth. It has to do with these two things. It has to do with their growth mindset. And growth mindset is made up of two parts, okay? Beliefs and focus. Okay, your belief in yourself, like truly understanding that, hey, I'm not great at math, I'm not great at writing. However, if I dedicate myself to learning it and I find resources that will help me, of course I can figure out how to write a thesis statement. Of course I can learn how to factor binomials, if that's what you do, right? You want to make sure that you understand that I know that I have the potential. Now, have I been giving my potential? Maybe not, but I know that I have the potential to learn most things if I put my whole heart into it. That is growth mindset. So it's the belief and then the effort, right? Your professor's formula for growth mindset is consistent hard work, that's the belief part, plus consistent good attitude. Sorry, I did it backwards. Consistent hard work, which is the effort part, the focus part, and consistent good attitude, which is the belief part. This is my formula. So consistent hard work plus a consistent good attitude equals success. And that is the basics of growth mindset. If you can consistently monitor, right? I woke up and I didn't get enough sleep last night, or I went out with my friends the night before and I got a little headache, right? I'm going to get onto campus. I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to breathe through it. I'm going to take some ibuprofen so my head doesn't hurt. And I'm going to walk into class and I'm going to repeat to myself, I'm here to learn. I'm excited about my day. I'm taking notes, right? You are constantly checking in with yourself to say, I enrolled in school to be an academic. Am I actually living up to that? And all I got to do is check two things. Do I believe in myself? Well, ask that person deep down in there. Of course I can learn anything. Okay, reminder. Yes, of course I can learn anything. Next, I got to be willing to work hard. I got to be willing to put in the effort. This is not easy. College is meant to be challenging. Man, I say that all the time. Students who say, oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Well, you're operating like high school, or you're operating like your previous attempt at college. No, if you want to be successful, if you don't want to be part of the statistics of the students who attempt college but don't finish, then you have to transform yourself into a self-leader who has become an academic. There's no cutting corners. If you're used to using AI, guess what? You're handicapping yourself. Use it right? Use it as an assistant to get jumping off points, but then do your work so that when it comes time for you to prove that you have all of these skills, you actually have them. How can you be a critical thinker if you haven't forced yourself to think critically? Right? These are things that you have to work on, you have to practice. So I encourage you to look at your module this week, to take your time and use each day. I encourage you to think about how to activate these skills in yourself as a leader this week, and to find little ways in your life to level up, right? And to think about what you did last week and how you can get better this week. So speaking of that, make sure that you note the 2 tasks that are in there. One is a quiz and one is a task assignment on emotional intelligence. And I want you to do your best and follow great directions. I'm here if you need me.